Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. And the rugged Treadwell, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
Good evening. Welcome to the show. I'm John Arnold. I'm your host of Protect and Serve. We want to welcome you to the show tonight. We thank you for tuning in with us. We have an exciting show dealing with police brutality in America with our special guests on tonight. We want to welcome you to Protect and Serve. Protect and Serve is the only live show where we talk about issues concerning law enforcement and in the community, especially the bridge that is deteriorating over the years and has been deteriorating for a number of years. Protect and Serve is a show where we try to let the community know why police do what they do and the manner in which they do it. And we also like to inform the police why the community does what they do and the manner in which they do it. And then somehow by opening up this dialogue, reestablishing and mending a relationship. You can't have a good relationship if there's no effective communication between the two. And we believe here at Protect and Serve that the paramount job for those who put on that uniform and wear that badge is to protect and to provide a service. As a matter of fact, most of the people, 90% of the people who become police officers have that in their heart. It's a job of servitude. It's a job where you get a good feeling, not from locking up someone, but actually by helping someone and protecting those in the neighborhood from the criminal element that is out there. From the history of policing up until now, it has not been without controversy. It has not been without issues. It has not been without problems and misunderstandings. We understand that. But I believe that if we continue to build bridges, we continue to talk about things and really be truthful and honest, I believe that those bridges can be built. We can work together. We can be more effective as police officers. We can be more effective as community members and citizens. I know it because I've seen it done. So we started this show because we wanted to make sure that we don't let that lost art of protecting and serving go back to something that we don't even know what it is. I mean, we look at policing, you look at the video you just saw. I mean, you're saying, where is this at? And it's here in the United States. So we want to talk about it tonight. So welcome to the show. Let's get at it. I want to bring in my two expert commentators, friends of mine, retired detective, Newark detective Stephanie Treadwell, and retired Essex County Prosecutors detective Anthony Cox. Welcome to the show.
Hi, good evening. Welcome to our living room, and may peace be unto your home.
And I see we all are sporting our I Can't Breathe shirts in honor of George Floyd, who was, he was buried yesterday. The celebration of his life was carried out by Reverend Al Sharpton and so many other people. What touched me yesterday about the funeral service was there were so many other victims of families of victims who were there in the audience. Even Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, who we discussed in previous shows, and it really was good. The star support that he had. Jamie Foxx was there. I'll be sure some others who came out. It really was a tearjerker yesterday if you watched it. So I was really impressed. I was really impressed by the homegoing service that the family did, and the family spoke very powerfully. This is a family that is broken, a family that is torn, had someone that they love torn away from them. Death by itself is already hard, but to really have someone die and leave you under these circumstances, was really horrible. But something good came out of this. Something good is coming out of it. His daughter said, "My daddy changed the world." And yes, he did. So we honor you, George, your memory, George Floyd. We honor the memory of those who have gone before him and have been lost to us by police brutality. So let's talk about it. What new developments do we have this week in regard to the case? Because I have a few I want to bring out to the community.
Bring it.
Well, one thing is, I know Tony wants to get in there too. One thing that I want to say real quick is that there was today, I saw a video today, interview today. It was we understand that George Floyd and the police officer both worked at a nightclub. They worked at a nightclub for several years. And apparently there was some beef between them. So when you add that element to the investigation, you have to look at a first-degree murder charge. Right now, he's charged with second-degree murder. But one of the things we talked about on another show was that when the detectives keep doing the investigation and things become uncovered, you can always upgrade charges. And the fact that he knew George Floyd, the officer knew George Floyd, changes the whole scenario altogether. It's not a first encounter between the police and the deceased, as it was in a lot of other police brutality cases. This man knew George for a while. They had beef, and now what he did looks more. We already know it was murder, but now it looks more like an intentional murder. The fact that he could say that, people can say, well, he was on his neck a little bit too long because that technique is allowed in the police department. So it was an accident. No, that's out the window. And a good prosecutor is going to tear that up, is going to eat that up. And a good detective will sew that up tight, because now you have motive other than accidental death during an arrest, which they first tried to do with a third-degree murder charge, which we know was if it was downgraded to be probation or something like that. So I'm very interested to see in the coming weeks how that is played out by the district attorney out there in Minnesota. But so come on, I know there's some other stuff that we need to bring to the community's attention.
Yeah, he was trying to negotiate a plea deal.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, he was trying to, and that's why when they were upping the charges, it took so long for them to, bring it out on the press conference, because they were still trying to, at that late date, still trying to negotiate. This is not negotiable.
Well, let me say this. It's a smart thing on his part, though, because he knows the system. So the understanding is that he tried to get a plea deal before the charges came down, because he knew he killed him, George Floyd, and he was trying to minimize the time, because it's very hard to get a conviction here in Minnesota on a police officer unless you're a police officer of color. All right, that's the issue here, and that would be smart. I mean, if I was a police officer and I knew that I did something I wasn't supposed to do, you daggone right, I'm gonna try to take a plea deal before, in hope that they don't do what has just happened. They uncovered a previous relationship. So, that's very interesting that you said that, Stephanie. But Tony, I think you had something too, right?
Well, just to piggyback off what you said about him knowing, Floyd, if you look at the video with that mindset that he knows him, it shows a whole different attitude towards the ex-police officer.
Right.
Think about it, because you have him on the ground. Why are you holding him on the ground that long?
Right. Right.
Main thing is
Right.
he's cuffed. He's not doing anything. He's, laying prone on the ground. Pick him up, put him in the car.
Well,
Why
Right.
is he laying there?
they took him out of his car. He was sitting in his car. They took
Yep.
him out of there. I mean, please.
So if you look at
Yeah.
that whole scenario now, you see a whole different mindset on, what happened.
Yes. And let me say this. I've been on a couple of conversations about this, and one of the things that was pointed to me was um, about his past. Why does the media always bring out the past of black victims? And come on, we know why. we know why. So but the thing is that as I answered, and I'll say it again tonight, his past has nothing to do with the incident. A police officer does not know your past when they come on the scene unless they've had a past encounter with you. When we were on patrol and we were dispatched to different scenes, we didn't know who was at the scene. And when we got there, we didn't know. That's why we did a record check, because we wanted to find out more about the individual that we were dealing with. So it's really irrelevant and an attempt to muddy and sully his reputation. You know what? The media needs to stop, because they're just as guilty in this, because what he was alleged to have committed, the crime that he was alleged to have committed, we're finding out that it was nothing wrong with the $20 bill. And as his brother testified today, he said, even if it was, is a black man's life only worth $20? Is any human life, can you put a value on any human life?
Nope.
No, regardless of if you were purple, if you're a purple human, you cannot put a value on human life, and especially $20. $20 can't even get you. I mean, what can you get with $20 now? You need at least $40 to go out to the store and do anything. So I mean, just being for real. So the issue was that this man lost his life for allegedly passing a fake $20 bill, and it is really a shame that those who would engage in that type of conduct would attempt to sully his reputation. So part of this whole reform is that we need to call out those type of media outlets that do that. We understand that's how they make money. They don't make money or get views by reporting that he was a good man. No, they want to dig something up and come up with something that nobody else knows. Okay, we get it, but it's going to stop, because you only do that with black people. So we have to stop. So I think it was something else that we wanted to talk about, right? On that answer, because if not, I want to bring our guest in. Our guest, we have a dynamic man that I know when I was the deputy director in Newark, that we watched side by side. I think it might have been the first time that police officers actually did that, when the Michael Brown case verdict was coming out, and we stood with Larry Hamm. I'm talking about Larry Hamm. If you don't know him, he's an organizer, an agitator, like me, a protester. He's been doing this for more than a quarter of a century. Let me tell you, he started out at Arts High as leading a student protest against the teacher strike, down to Princeton University. Brother Hamm was down there leading demonstrations against apartheid. He is known to thousands across the nation as the go-to man in times of trouble and adversity. He is one of New Jersey's leading voices against police brutality, social injustice, and urban violence. He is the chairman of the People's Organization of Progress and state director of the Million Man March of New Jersey. We want our Protect and Serve audience to welcome our brother Larry Hamm. I always call you Larry. I'm trying to be proper tonight. So Larry Hamm, brother Hamm, welcome to the show.
Thank you, brother Arnold. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be on your show.
Thank you for accepting the invitation. I know I try to do my best to at least give you give the audience a little bit of who you are. But would you just take a few minutes and just tell us just a little bit more about some of the most recent stuff you're doing and whatever I might have not have covered, because there's so much to you. You're a man of so many different dimensions that I want the audience to really know who you are.
Well, you covered a lot of territory there, and I would just add, I'm a black man that's been fortunate to live 66 years. I'll be 67 in December.
Oh, wow.
And yes, time flies.
Yes, sir. Looking
And
good.
thanks, brother. And, I started out as a high school student activist, and that was in 1971. Uh, I was appointed to the Newark Board of Education. I was the youngest and still probably hold the record as the youngest person fully voting school board member. I was 17 when I was appointed to the school board in Newark in July of 1971. And I
Wow.
served 3 years. And after that, I had been accepted at Princeton University. After that, I returned to Princeton in 1974. And I graduated in 1978, cum laude from Princeton University. But while I was at Princeton, I was a leader of the anti-apartheid student movement on campus, and we got Princeton to divest, that is, take their funds out of a couple of companies that were doing business with the racist apartheid regime in South Africa. I did a couple of years of graduate work at Princeton and then returned to Newark, New Jersey. And to make a long story short, in 1982, we organized the People's Organization for Progress. We officially founded it in 1983, and it still exists. We'll be looking
Great.
at our 38th anniversary in
Wow.
August of this year. 38 years, yes.
Yes.
Um, also, I supported Jesse Jackson's 1984 and 1988 campaigns. I was the organizer of the Rainbow Coalition in New Jersey. I was a Jesse Jackson delegate to the 1988 convention in Atlanta. And today's topic is police brutality. So, the first case I think that People's Organization for Progress really got involved in was the Philip Pennell case. And that was 1990 when he was killed by, I believe it was Officer Gary Spath in Teaneck, New Jersey.
Right.
And we've participated in many police brutality cases since then. And just this past weekend, we organized the largest demonstration in Newark history. According to the New York Times, 12,000 people
Yes.
marched in Newark on Saturday, May 30th, to protest the murder of George Floyd.
Yes.
And lastly, I am a candidate for United States Senate. I'm on the ballot. Yes, I'm on the ballot for the New Jersey Democratic primary, which will officially be July the 7th now. People are actually getting their ballots in the mail, so they
Yes.
can vote all right now. They don't have to wait. But the last day is Tuesday, July 7th.
That's right. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What an extensive history lesson we just learned. For those of us who know you, we thought we knew you, but we know a little bit more about you, and we thank you for your service, Brother Hamm, because it's not a time where something is going on in current events that we don't see you and the People's Organization for Progress marching and holding banners. Matter of fact, May 30th, I might add that not only did you have the largest protests, but you had the largest peaceful protests where there was no
Yes.
looting, there was no arrest, there was none of that
Yes.
because
Yes.
of the respect that you have in the community. And when there was some folks, some agitators who came in from other towns who tried to do it, I was impressed by the young people who follow you, who stopped them and called them out and said, "No, this is our city. You're not burning it down. You're not going to tag it and do all of those other crazy stuff." And the
Right.
protest was 12,000 people. I mean, it was awesome, and not one arrest, not any problem. So that's something to be commended. I take my hat off to you, and as always, I sit back and watch,
Well,
and I was really impressed with that. So I want to thank you for that.
yes.
I
Yes.
have
And I want to thank also Mayor Ross Baraka,
yes, yes,
because it was important. The people who work in city government, and that includes the police, they really take their leadership from the top.
that's right.
And the mayor, embraced protests. He helped make a space for us to protest, and he implemented police strategy and tactics that day that also made it possible for the outcome that was without vandalism and violence.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was very significant. Like, you didn't see any police in riot gear.
Right.
You know, the police weren't trying to strike no provocative poses.
Right.
You
Right.
didn't see any, you know, negative interactions. You know, the leadership of the city helped make that happen also.
Yes, yes. You know, we give big props to Mayor Raz Baraka. He's been out there on the front line before he became the mayor. He's not new to it. As we say, he's true to it. And I remember as deputy director, you were organizing the Michael Brown
Right.
protest, and it was down at the federal building that we had. You had a mic set up, and I got the call from then Director Venable, who was telling me that we were going to march and we were participating. And I said, "Oh, that's good." I never saw police officers stand with community activists, but not only were police officers there, you had the clergy there. We all stood with you. You had members from National Action Network, Steffi Bartley. They were all there. And I remember that. I mean, that's a recorded
Yes.
history of Newark. And Mayor Baraka had told us that, you know, this is what he desired. This is what he wanted. He wanted police escort for those who were marching. And some of the protesters were like, wait a minute, they didn't trust us because of the first time it was done. But it turned out to be
Right.
an awesome event. Even the police officers
Yes.
were not used to that. So it was a new injection into the police department. But it's part of what they're called to do. So, you know, like you said, it starts from the top. The strategy and the mentality came from the top, and then it flows down. So
Right.
that was a great thing. We got a couple of questions for you, brother Hamm, that you know we want to
Yes.
just get edified on, and from one of the ones studying the police officers, police departments. Police departments started in the South in this country with sheriffs, marshals, you know, Texas Rangers, and then about I think in the 1700s, Philadelphia was one of the first cities to have an organized police department. And
Right.
from there, other departments came up. I think Richmond, Virginia was next, then New York City, then subsequently all these other towns came up. And you know, my question that I have is police brutality, because as long as we have the history of the police, we have brutality. Even back when we had the slave patrols, we had those times. There was always a brutality that came with policing. Would you say that that police brutality started here in America, from your experience and knowledge of policing?
Well, regarding the American experience, I think the origins of police brutality very much have to do with the colonial history of this country. Um, America was founded on violence. I know people are used to seeing the picture of the founding fathers at Convention Hall in Philadelphia, but America was founded on literally oceans of blood.
Yes.
This country was founded by European uh, white settlers who, through a variety of ways, including the most heinous violence imaginable, cleared this land of its indigenous people. I
Yes.
mean, literally, where I am sitting and you are sitting right now was Indian land.
Yeah.
I mean, the indigenous people, they didn't even have, I don't think they even had a concept of private property, you know,
Mm.
and before you know it, they were being murdered in mass and pushed to the West. I would recommend your readers two books. One would be A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn, and the other book would be Bury My Heart on Wounded Knee
Mm.
by D. Brown.
Mm.
And the second book is specifically one history of Native Americans in this country. I mean, Weequahic High School, its mascot is an Indian chief. Why? Because here in Essex County, when Robert Treat first came to New Amsterdam. That's what Jersey was at first.
Mhm.
It was part of New Amsterdam. He encountered the Lenape, the Indians. That's why Weequahic High School mascot is an Indian, because this was Lenni Lenape land.
Right.
But the Lenni Lenape, for the most part, are gone. There are few left. The Ramapo Indians who live on the Ramapo Reservation. Most people probably don't even know there are Indian reservations in New Jersey. There are a couple in
Wow.
New Jersey. And they are the remnants of the Lenape that were here, the Ramapo people. They just settled a big court case when people still trying to take their land. This golf course was trying. This golf course was encroaching on the Native American reservation, and they had to fight for several years in court to get these people off their land. You know,
Wow.
it's
Jeez.
Amazing.
into the 21st century. So it took unimaginable amounts of violence by the white colonial after they did that. You know, it was New Amsterdam. It became New Jersey when the English and the Dutch had a war and the English won.
Hmm.
So Amsterdam is in the Netherlands, right?
That's right.
So it wasn't New Amsterdam anymore. It was Jersey.
That's right.
Jer-
That's right.
Jersey is in England.
That's right.
So it became New
New Jersey.
Jersey. That's why they call all these states up here New England.
Yeah.
Because when the Dutch lost to the English, they lost all their colonial possessions. So everything that had a Dutch name was changed. That's why we got the paper in New York called Amsterdam News.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
Harlem is a Dutch word.
Wow.
Harlem is a Dutch word, you know, and black people used to live downtown, but during the draft riots, when the Irish didn't want to fight in the Civil War, they tried to burn the city down. They tried to burn black people's section of the city down. All the black people moved down from where they lived, which was by the World Trade Center, up to Harlem. But Harlem is is a Dutch word because
Yeah.
New Amsterdam was a Dutch settlement. So the first was the use of violence against the, you know, the host. Okay, can you still hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Yes,
You hear
sir.
me? Okay, and then they had to have somebody to do the work because the Indians knew the land. They could run away. Plus, the Native Americans, they didn't have a lot of resistance to the diseases that the Europeans brought with them. You know, most of the Native Americans, most of them actually died from
Yeah.
diseases that they contracted from being in close proximity to Europeans. Remember, these were two separate hemispheres, separated by vast oceans of water. So
Mhm.
these diseases weren't here, and they were brought here. So the organisms in this hemisphere had no resistance, and man, these diseases failed them in a terrible way. But anyway, they had to have somebody to work the land, so they brought Africans here in New Jersey, right? Uh, this colony was founded in 1620. The first Africans come to the American colonies in 1619. The first Africans as a part of the African slave trade, the Mid-Atlantic slave trade. By 1625, Africans were here in New Jersey. By 1640, and this is where the police thing starts to happen. By 1640, most colonies had passed laws that enabled slave masters to kill their slaves.
Mm.
Like you couldn't sue a slave master for killing a slave because the slave was his property.
That's right.
How could someone be convicted of murdering their property? And
Mm.
so within a few years, every colony had that law. So it was the law of the land. It wasn't just the custom that came from the killing of the Native Americans. And I really recommend people read that book by D. Brown. It will make you don't eat food before you eat it, because when you read about some of the things that were done to the Native Americans, if you have a queasy stomach, you're not going to be able to get through it. But you know, so that was the beginning that white people literally could do to black bodies what they want. And this was in the private sector as well as the public sector. The master was the law of the plantation. He could punish, he could whip, he could put people in stockades, he could murder, he could rape with impunity. We were property. So this idea that people can do to our bodies whatever they feel they want to do, it is in the psycho-social fabric of the country. I mean, how could anything good come from such a bad seed? It's there from the beginning. And all of the institutions that we have in our country were built on that. So
Yes.
when they begin to bring Africans in mass to do the work, first Africans here in Virginia, 1619, we were in New Jersey by 1625. The colony was only founded in 1620. We were here by 1625, clearing the land, building dams, farming, building structures, doing all the heavy lifting. So when people talk about go back to Africa, they have to go back before we go because we were here. There are only one other people here, the indigenous people, and then we're here. And you know, this is just a side note. It ain't really got nothing to do with our topic. But the further, if you look at history books and you look at artists' concept before they had photography of what the indigenous people looked like, they are black. They are very dark.
Yes.
You know, even in the earliest photographs,
Yes.
you know, what they call lithographs. When you look at the so-called Indians, they were very, very dark. You know, when the modern photography comes into being and you see pictures of them, they're light because there's been so much intermarriage. You
Yes.
know, and some of them look white. I lived with Native Americans in Oklahoma for a month. I lived on the reservation outside of Fort Sill, Oklahoma. But anyway, that's just an aside. So they bring Africans here in large numbers, and what do? We rebel because we don't
Yeah.
want to be slaves. You
All right.
know. So what happens? They have to create slave patrols, which you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
And I actually read where Bratton, the commissioner of police in New York City, he gave a speech. I think it was the year that Michael Brown was killed, actually. And he talked about how the modern police force of New Amsterdam, of New York City, evolved from the slave patrols of New Amsterdam. And that's in the North because people think of slavery as a Southern phenomenon. Slavery was a national institution. There were slaves even in New Jersey as the Civil War was being fought. Many people don't know that. Most of the states that were in the Union had slaves even while they were fighting the Civil War to abolish slavery. And this state here was very sympathetic to
All
the
right.
South because the South sent cotton up here. It was turned into cloth and clothes and sent back down south. So people were making money. When Abraham Lincoln ran for president in 1860, he lost New Jersey. And when he ran in 1864, he lost New Jersey again. When Lincoln issues the Emancipation Proclamation in September of 1862, the state legislature of New Jersey nullified Lincoln's power to emancipate slaves in this state. When it was time to pass the 13th Amendment, you needed 20. There were 36 states. 9 of them had been part of the Confederacy. You needed 27, a three-fourths majority, to amend the Constitution. The 13th Amendment they had to pass to eliminate chattel slavery. New Jersey was not in the 27-state majority to eliminate slavery. There's a town in New Jersey called Pennington. And I urge people, I urge your listeners to go to Pennington, New Jersey. Why do I say go to Pennington? Because in Pennington, there is a cemetery called the African Cemetery. That's what it's called. That's not the nickname. That's the real name. It's the
Wow.
African Cemetery.
Yes.
And why
Yes.
do they have an African cemetery in Pennington?
Yeah.
Because even though blacks and whites were both Union soldiers, even after the Civil Civil War in the North, in New Jersey, the black soldiers and the white soldiers could not be buried in the same cemetery. So
Wow.
after the Civil War, the black people of Pennington put their pennies together and they bought a piece of land. And you talk about the museum, go to this cemetery so you can see, because these brothers got headstones. They wanted posterity to see what it took to end slavery. It took a war. It took violence. I'm not a proponent of violence, but let's call a spade a spade. For 245 years, people petitioned for an end to slavery, wrote letters, had conventions, even had protests demanding an end to slavery. It took a war, the worst war this country ever had. People don't know. More Americans died in the Civil War than in World Wars One, Two, Korea, and Vietnam combined.
Wow.
That's what it took to end. And
Wow.
when you look at the headstones that are in Pennington on those brothers' graves, it has infantry, cavalry, cannon master. They wanted you to see the service that they had done so that we could have our freedom. And then I noticed something when I was looking at the headstones, and I digress for a minute, I apologize. But I noticed something. I noticed a lot of these brothers were from, uh, they served their battalions were in Connecticut. I said, these are men, they buried in New Jersey. They're from New Jersey, but their battalions are in Connecticut and Pennsylvania. That was because New Jersey would not permit black men to enlist in the Union Army. They had to leave New Jersey and go to Connecticut and to Massachusetts and to Pennsylvania in order to sign up to fight in the war to free their families and free their people. But I say this because you have to understand the role of violence and historically how the idea that someone could do violence to us in anywhere, any place, at any time, where this comes from. I remember when I was a little boy, there used to be a program on about Arnold. You're not as old as I am, but maybe you remember. Maybe you saw it on the cable show. There used to be a program about the Texas Rangers. You
Yeah.
remember the program about the Texas Rangers?
Yeah.
You know, when I was a little boy, they would sell little Texas Rangers guns down at Woolworths downtown
That's
Newark.
right.
I love the Texas Rangers,
Yeah.
but the Texas Rangers committed some of the worst atrocities, violent atrocities against the Mexicanos, the Mexican people that were in Texas. Do you know why Texas was called a Lone Star State? Because Texas was part of Mexico. And when Mexico had their revolution, they abolished slavery. The
Wow.
Texans did not want to abolish slavery. So they formed a republic. When you go to Texas, you see people talking about the Republic of Texas. For a
Right.
short time, Texas was a republic. It had broken away from Mexico and formed a republic so that they could continue slavery. I went down to the Alamo. You got to go to the Alamo sometime, right? And I'm looking, and all my favorite characters was at the Alamo. All the ones that Walt Disney taught me about on Sunday evening. Davy Crockett and Jim Bowie. These were real people. They
Right.
went to Texas to fight. But you know, why did they go to Texas to fight? They went to Texas to fight so that Texas could keep slavery. The Alamo was about keeping slavery. But we don't know that history. You
Right.
know, we don't know it. California, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Texas, they were all part of Mexico. And it was snatched by a war of imperialism. The Mexican American War was a U.S. imperialistic war that took that territory from Mexico. you know, and that's a long story. So brother, you really summed it up when you said that the modern police as we know them, and you can read a book called Slave Rebellions in Colonial America by Herbert Apteker, where he traces the development in there. One of the things he does is trace the development of modern police forces. After emancipation, we move from the plantation to the cities. So the cities had to form laws to control us in those cities, loitering laws and vagrancy laws, and laws like 3 black people can't stand on the corner. And then they formed police to enforce those laws. But you know what those laws were all about? About re-enslaving us. Because once we moved off the plantation into the cities, we hadn't really nowhere to go. You know what Frederick Douglass said about emancipation? Frederick Douglass said we were free to starve because they didn't do anything to provide for us after emancipation. Lincoln was going to do, and feel free to interrupt me at any time because I won't put nobody to sleep. But, you know, reparations was real. Lincoln in his 1864 speech said we have to make restitution for the 245 years of labor that we stole from the bondsmen. So the plan was to give us land. General Sherman, when he came through the South, issued General Order number 15 that immediately confiscated 400,000 acres of slave masters' land and redistributed to the slaves. And then based on that, Thaddeus Stevens puts in the bill H.R. 29 after the Civil War to give every freedman or his family that survived him if he fought in the war 40 acres and $50. But what happened? There was a conspiracy to assassinate Abraham Lincoln, and his Southern sympathizing vice president, Andrew Johnson, took over, vetoed H.R. 29, and gave back all the land that Sherman had. So I just say that to say all of this is related. It was all about the use of force, you know. And then when we moved from the south to the north, more police forces and the same thing. But what I was trying to say before was that after emancipation, they was trying to re-enslave us. Prison. See, the 13th Amendment says what? It says end to slavery for everyone except those convicted of a crime.
Wow.
And really, the 13th Amendment needs to be amended because people in prison are essentially slaves.
Right.
So they essentially tried to re-enslave us. So let me stop right here, brother. I know I got a ways going on, but please.
Hey, we appreciate the lesson because you know what it does for our viewers. And viewers, you are free to comment. Please, you know, you have you have the opportunity to comment in the comments and ask questions because there has to be, you know, you don't understand something until you know the foundation upon which it was built on. So understanding, you said something very key that Commissioner Bratton said, and I remember him being the commissioner of New York while Michael Brown was during that time, because he actually was hosted. We hosted him in Newark, and I'm not sure if you were there, but we hosted him at the Rutgers Law School in Newark during that time, and he was talking to us. And one of the things that you said was that I know that the police departments evolved out of the slave patrol. So that mentality of brutalness, that mentality of brutality against certain people and against, you know, as America got more integrated and more people came to America, it just carried over into other communities, black and brown communities. It just, you know, if it's there, it's like a child doesn't know racism until he's taught racism. As a child, I was innocent. I was an innocent child. I had a white friend named Patrick, and you know, me and him were best friends. But as I got older, I saw that people that looked like Patrick didn't really receive me or accept me. And then my first experience of racism actually came on the job. So, you know, in police departments, just like we saw with George Floyd, those officers were only on the job for 2 and 3 days, or the longest a week. They followed the lead of the 20-year veteran. And Of
Right.
course, as the chief said today, they should have gotten off of. They should have got an offer. Where was the humanity that even though they were just on the job for a couple of days, where was the humanity that they didn't get off of him following the lead of their 20-year veteran? But that's how it is in policing. As your training officer, you don't go against your training officer. You are going to listen to your training officer and do what they tell you. And because you trust them. That's all you have is that mentality, you against them. But I want to ask Stephanie and Anthony maybe to give some questions for Brother Hamm.
Well, real quick, the only question I have besides the one I asked you, were you ever a victim of police brutality? What I need to know is, what do we tell these children, because they're constantly seeing these videos every day, and like this same thing is happening again and again, which it is happening again and again, but they're afraid, they're scared to death.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I have three grown daughters, and I have always told my children to obey the law and be respectful of police officers and follow directions. But I have also taught them to stand up against injustice. I mean, my own daughters, many people don't know because I don't be in the crowd. I don't be speaking and saying, that's my daughter over there. But my children have marched with me on numerous occasions at some of these demos. In fact, at the George Floyd demonstration, the big one we had on Saturday, the 30th, my daughter was with me. So I have tried to teach them to be respectful, to obey the law, but at the same time to stand up against just injustice and to speak truth to power. I had an incident with my youngest daughter when she was in high school, her senior year, getting ready to graduate. She went to a concert with some friends at a theater in the Village in New York, and there was an incident, and a young white girl had her necklace stolen, and the police said to her, well, do you see anybody in here that stole your necklace? And she pointed to my daughter. My daughter wouldn't steal anything. She wouldn't steal from herself, you know. But the criminal justice system is set up to devour our children.
Wow.
If my daughter had not had I remember the night she was arrested. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, who's calling me at 2 o'clock? It's my daughter, Daddy. I'm locked up down at the police station. I think she was on like 7th Street or 8th Street, somewhere in the Village of New York. I had to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go get my daughter out of jail. If my daughter had not had two parents that had jobs that could afford a private attorney, my daughter be in jail today.
Wow.
Because that system was set up to devour my child. We went to court 4 times. 4 times the person who accused my daughter never showed up in court to offer testimony or identify my daughter in court. So every time we went to court, we had to pay that private attorney $400 an hour to be in New York, an attorney that knew the system in New York, to do whatever had to be done to keep my daughter out of jail. We thought that upon the first time, when the person didn't show up, that the judge would release my daughter. No, they called us back 3 more times until finally that white judge said, it seems that there's really no case here. And even then, he didn't just blanketly dismiss it. He said, we have the file. It will remain sealed for 6 months. If there's no other complaint, we'll, what's the word when they eradicate the file? Expunge or whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, if my child had been less fortunate and didn't have 2 parents working that could afford a, because them public defenders are not going to do it. All the public defender will try to bargain down your charges.
You're right.
So parents have to be vigilant with their children, because this is the new slavery.
Yeah.
Michelle Alexander wrote that great and wonderful book, The New Jim Crow, but it shouldn't have been Jim Crow. It should have been the new slavery. That's slave labor in them prisons. They putting them people to work. They working for Fortune 500 corporations, and they working for slave wages. I think the wage in prison is something like $1.85 an hour. That's slavery.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell your children, to be vigilant and to protect themselves, know how to interact with the police, but because we conduct ourselves in the right way does not mean we don't stand up and speak out against injustice.
Right. Brother Tony, you have a question before we go to one of the? I want to ask Brother Hamm one of the questions from one of the comments. But you have a question, Brother Tony?
Well, it was similar to what Stephanie said about the youth. That's our generation coming up. Like a few years ago, they had the flash mobs. They would get on social media and they would
Yes.
just show up at a mall, like 300-400 kids show up at a mall. Speaking to some few students, do you suggest they continue to do that?
No.
In order to protest?
Not in this environment. No, not in this environment.
Right.
We are in a police state right now. We are in a police state. I mean, Americans are fooled because the American police state is an iron fist in a velvet glove. And we are fooled by the velvet.
Right.
But it's an iron fist. And this system is so constructed that we live in what criminologists call a criminogenic system. It means that the laws are structured in such a way to be broken. It's like the past laws in South Africa. In South Africa, if you were caught without your passbook, you go to jail. Right. 80% of the black population in South Africa went to jail because sooner or later, one day, there's going to be a day when you wake up and you forget your past law. And this system is set up to suck in our children, process them, and stick them in a jail, because jails and prisons are white people's affirmative action. I can remember a time when white people didn't want no prison in their town. Now they beg for prisons to be constructed in the town because it's a source of jobs and contracts and revenue for that community.
Wow.
We are a garrison police state. America only has 5% of the world's population, but we have 25% of the world's prisons. China has 1.3 billion people. We only have 330 million people, 1/4 of China's population. We have more prisoners in America than China, Iraq, and Iran combined. We are a police state and a garrison state. And we have to protect our children because that criminal justice system is designed to suck them in and enslave them.
Wow. I want to take a question from Nia Imani. She addressed this to all of us, but Brother Hamm, while we have you here, I want to know. She wants to know for you, what do you understand defund the police mean? We hear this term frequently now, defund the police, and I just want to get your. She wants to know like what's your take on that, and then we'll answer individually.
Well, defund police is at the bottom of defund police. It means to take money from police budgets and spend it on social needs. It's sort of the local variation of cutting the military budget. Like right now, if you were to see a pie chart of all the things that our tax dollars are spent on, the military, the Pentagon budget literally is like 3/4 of the entire pie. Right. Everything else is in that 1/4 of the slice. So people say we should cut the Pentagon budget. Sister Barbara Lee was on the floor of Congress a couple of weeks ago calling for cuts in the military budget and to spend that money on housing, education, health care, the needs of the people. So people are saying that some of these police budgets are as bloated as the military budgets and should be defunded. Um, I certainly support defunding the militarization of the police. You know, I remember when Ferguson broke loose, right? Brother Arnold, you might remember this.
Yes.
I was in a store the next day after the first uprising in Ferguson, and I looked down at the newspapers, the New York Times, and I looked down at the picture. I thought it was the Palestinians fighting Israelis. It was the soldiers on one side with tanks and kids throwing rocks on the other side. I said, oh, that's Israel.
That's
And then when I read the paper, it was Ferguson
Ferguson.
because
Yep.
the police had tanks. They
Yeah.
had dressed up in military uniforms, military gear. The United States government has a program called the 1099 program. I think that's the number. And the government literally gives local police forces military surplus,
Right.
equipment, arms, etc.,
That's right.
etc.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you can't tell the army from the police now.
Yes. Yes. That's very true because we have seen. I mean, we have certain equipment within police departments, but the problem is there's no national regulation for the police departments. Each state can build
Right.
a police department the way they want to build it according to their needs. And some people, you have a lot of military in the police department, and they come out with that mentality that they're at war with the people. So they buy equipment that you would normally buy in a wartime situation. And not saying some of it isn't needed, for in within towns in case of terrorist attacks and stuff like that. But when it's used on the people, everyday people in the community, that's definitely what I see them talking about: defund the police department, reallocating monies in the police department, and taking the police out of certain things because certain things that police are responding to, they're not trained in. So, when you have police responding
Right.
to people with mental illnesses, you never want to introduce a gun into a mental illness situation. That's one thing they always
Right.
tell you because, mainly when you do that, your life is at stake, not so much the person who is mentally ill. But now the police are saying, okay, well, I'm not going to negotiate. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to, I have the authority and I'm going to use it. And we saw a lot of people being killed by police officers. So a lot of departments went to tasers. But before then, it was the only answer to that was, shooting them. And it was just, you call. Imagine you a family, you call them to help, call police to help you with your family member who is mentally ill, and the next thing they end up dead. So it really was putting a strain on police departments and in the community that there was no type of interaction. You have one more here. Let me see. It was basically a comment. But in the closing minutes, we want to thank you for coming on, Brother Hamm. But we also want you to tell us a little bit about your candidacy because we understand that you're running for senator, and
Yes.
you're like I was in 2012. You're going against the machine. But but
Yes.
but I see the momentum is growing. I see the momentum is growing. So tell us a little bit about that, before we let you go.
Yes. Yes. I'm running for the United States Senate. I'm a candidate. I'm on the ballot. And people should be received if they haven't already received their ballot. Some people have. Some people will be receiving their ballots, and you will see me in the column for United States Senator or on the line for United States Senator. I'm running on a platform for racial equity, justice, and equality. I'm running on a platform that includes Medicare for all. I'm running on a platform that includes a universal basic income for everybody to eliminate poverty. I'm running on a platform that includes doubling the minimum wage because you can't pay rent on $7 an hour. We need a $15 an hour minimum wage, and everybody needs a living wage. I'm running on a platform that includes free public colleges, universities, and trade schools, and eliminating all student debt because our young people will never be able to have the quality of life a college education is supposed to give if they're carrying at the outset $100,000 in debt for 4 years of college. I am running on a platform that includes the Green New Deal and the Red, Black, and Green New Deal, because we need reparations.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, as
Amen.
my platform includes reparations. I'm like out
Amen.
there with it, you know,
That's right.
running on it, and also, you know, breaking our dependency on fossil fuels and developing whole new industries based on wind, solar, hydro, and geothermal, which are natural forms of energy. I want to end these useless wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, Yemen, and other places. We don't spend $6 trillion in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's ridiculous. What have we got for it? Not a damn thing. What do we know? We know it was all based on a lie. The
Yeah.
people who started the war said there was no weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
So why isn't anybody in the Hague for war crimes?
Right.
We don't went over there and tore up two or three countries. Those people have been set so far. It will take them 100 years
Get that.
to recover from the damage that we
Right.
have done to their countries.
Yes.
So these are some of the, and also I want to make the rich pay their fair share of taxes. How is it that people got $21 trillion squirreled away in offshore accounts in the Bahamas and other foreign countries? Because they're not paying their fair share of taxes. So
Right.
that's my platform. I'm running on the people's platform, and I hope people will vote for me
Oh yeah.
on between now and July the 7th.
That's right. Well, listen, Mr. Brother Ham, we thank you. And to our listeners, you know, listen, you heard his platform. You know, voting is the only way, putting the right people in office is the only way that we're going to change and address the systemic racism, the police brutality, and all of the other issues that affect our people. So you know what to do. The ballots are out. They came out today, actually. July 7th is the primary, the time for you to vote. So please make sure you do your part. Complete your census. Definitely do that. And
That's
also
right.
make sure you go to the polls and vote. Politics is local. And right now, you have heard from the man. You know what he's about. You know he knows his history. He knows what the
Yes.
issues are, and he has solutions. So when you're weighing, who you're going to vote for at the ballot box, you heard from Brother Ham. So, Brother Ham, we thank you for coming on the show. We don't want to keep you any
Thank
longer.
you, Brother Arnold.
Thank you
Thank you,
so
Brother
much.
Cox.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Stephanie.
we were blessed by you today.
Yep.
Thank you so
Oh, yeah.
much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you. Take care.
And
Stay safe.
welcome back
Bye-bye.
anytime.
Yes. Please.
Oh,
Yes.
just call me.
Yes, we
You
will
see,
do.
I like to talk. So just
Hey, that's
call
all
me.
right. We like to listen.
Good. Listen.
We like to listen. We want to thank Brother Ham for coming on and spending some time. We don't take it lightly that he took the time out of his schedule to come and speak to the community. While he was talking about defunding the police department, one of our comments was from Nia Imani. She had asked a question and she had a follow-up question asking about cutting or redirecting fund would mean less cops. Wouldn't this be dangerous? And yes, when we talk about the thing is, it's so new right now that nobody knows exactly. It depends on who you ask is what type of answer you're going to get as far as defunding. But being a deputy police director in a major city, there are certain monies that come into the police department based upon certain services that they're supposed to provide. One of the major one of the major sources of income that police departments get, and especially in big cities, is forfeiture funds. So you have to understand that forfeiture funds is money that are directed from the government, and they have a specific use. In Newark, one of the budget for out of the city budget, the police department's budget supplemented the city budget because certain things that were given to the city after they were turned over after a certain shelf life, you can turn it over. The city could buy it for a reduced price. But a lot of those things, when you talk about defunding, it's not as simple as just pulling money away because you don't want to have less cops. You don't want to have less cops. You do want to redirect. You might want to redirect and put more money into educating cops and operational stress management, deconfliction, de-escalation, those type of trainings, things that are going to benefit the community. But I do believe that The people should be involved in sitting down with city officials, just like with the consent decrees and the federal monitors, and their input is important. And the reason why you have to vote, is because in 2015, the Obama administration realized that there was a disproportionate number of police brutality cases against people of color. The Obama administration recognized that there was systemic racism within police departments across America. So they instituted a federal monitor and consent decrees. But in 2016, the Trump administration basically took all of that off the shelf. It's almost non-existent, and they're trying to reduce the consent decrees, the federal monitors that are there. They're trying to cut them back now. And that embrazens the police officers who were being watched and monitored. They just go do what they want to do. And this is the result. When you take restrictions off of something, it just goes wild. It's like, imagine putting gasoline on a fire and you don't have no way to get out. You're going to get burnt. So America is being burnt right now through these protests, and everyone, it is no longer a secret. The whole entire world is raising up over the injustices in America. I mean, countries that don't even have high cases of police brutality are saying enough is enough. How dare you talk to us and, tell us what to do, and you don't have your house in order. So, that's one of the things I want to say to our audience. Make sure you get out and vote. Make sure you vote in your local elections. Make sure you put pressure on your politicians and your leaders to put people who are qualified, that are going to increase the number of folks who look like you into the police department. All right, because that's what you need. The folks that come from the city, they know the city, they know the folks. So you have a lot of outsiders that come in here, and they don't treat you the same way. You come to somebody's house and you don't know them, you're going to act a little different. That's just human nature. So that's one of the things you should be pushing for. Closing remarks from my expert commentators. Come on, I want y'all to say something before we say goodbye.
Come back next week. That's what I have to say. We have new subjects every week, and if there's something that you feel like you need for us to address, just put it in the comments, and we'll try to give you whatever we have. If we don't have it, we'll find it.
Yes.
And also, each one bring one.
That's right.
Come on to the show. We're here for you.
Yeah. What's next week's? Do you know yet?
Oh, that's a secret. We're going to put it out. Make sure you look at you watch our Facebook page, the New Jersey Urban Crime Foundation, where we post what we're going to be talking about next week. There's so much going on around the world that we are constantly trying to bring you the best guests and the best thoughts on different subjects that are going on throughout the world, and we want you to engage us. I mean, I see that the comments are coming in. We're going to assess these comments, and we're going to address them in our next week's show. So we're going to be doing our homework. We want you to do your homework, and we want you to bring somebody, as Tony said, bring somebody back to the show next week to watch it. And the more we spread this word, it catches on, then you're better equipped when you go before leaders in the police departments and you make demands. The thing that I saw when we go before leaders is we don't know what to ask for, but we want to make sure that you leave this show well informed and knowledgeable. So when you go before your leaders who you put in office and vote for, that you ask the right questions so you get the right results. Because if you don't, one of the things about any leader, if you don't ask the question, if you don't ask for it, I'm not going to volunteer it. That's how they are. So we want to make sure that you have the right questions so that you can move your community forward, that your community will be safe, and you have people who will care for you and not want to brutalize you in your community, taking care of you. So I thank you. Thank my guests, Steffi and Tony. Thanks for coming on again, man. Let's show them the shirts. We honor George Floyd's memory today with the T-shirts, that says "I can't breathe." We really honor his memory, and we're keeping his family in prayer because we know that they've laid his body to rest yesterday, and his brother went before Congress, and we just thank him for what he did when he went to Congress. He went before Congress and laid it out. So we just thank. He said, "Make it stop." That's what brought tears to my eyes. So we thank you for coming, and we'll see you next week on Protect and Serve. Be blessed, safe.
Stay safe.
Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.